A symphony of compassion and change. Evelyn Price, an elderly cleaning lady with a gentle soul and a lifetime of hardships etched in the lines on her face, was closing up her late shift at a modest establishment known as Sunrise Diner. The diner's neon sign flickered intermittently in the cool night air, casting wavering beams of light across the worn wooden tables and faded linoleum floors. It was on one such evening, as Evelyn quietly polished the last of the tables, that she noticed a small figure huddled by the window. Outside, in a relentless downpour, a frail boy in a wheelchair trembled uncontrollably. His shivering form, barely visible against the glistening pavement, stirred something deep within her. Without a moment's hesitation, Evelyn abandoned her cleaning rag. Ignoring the sting of the cold rain on her weathered skin, she stepped outside into the storm. The biting chill seemed almost to recoil her determination. In a soft, steady voice, she beckoned the boy to come inside. "Come in, dear," she said, her tone a mixture of gentle authority and sincere kindness. "You mustn't stay out in this harsh cold." The boy, whose eyes, clear and piercing blue, reflected both fear and hope, hesitated only a moment before accepting the offer. "My dad said I should wait here," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the patter of the rain. Although the boy's name was softly spoken as Caleb, Evelyn could sense the loneliness that he carried like a heavy cloak. As she guided his wheelchair through the diner's door, the warmth of the interior embraced him like a protective shield against the unforgiving night. Inside Sunrise Diner, only a few patrons remained, each quietly sipping coffee or lost in their own reflective thoughts. Evelyn quickly draped a clean towel over Caleb's shoulders and gently dabbed away the remnants of rain from his small, delicate face. "What's your name, son?" she inquired kindly. In a whisper, Caleb replied, his voice timid but hopeful. "Caleb." Sensing his need for immediate comfort, Evelyn retreated momentarily to the kitchen. There, she prepared a plate of toasted bread and a steaming bowl of soup. With an affectionate smile, she returned and set the meal before Caleb. "Eat up, dear," she urged softly. "You'll warm up in no time." At that precise moment, the comforting cocoon of the diner's interior was shattered by an abrupt intrusion. A sharp, disdainful voice cut through the quiet ambience. "What do you think you're doing with that child?" demanded Olivia Brooks, a well-to-do middle-aged woman and a frequent patron, her tone laden with suspicion and barely concealed contempt. Evelyn's expression remained calm as she turned to face Olivia. "I'm simply helping this boy," she explained, her voice steady despite the sudden tension. "He's cold, he's hungry, he needs care." Olivia's eyes narrowed, and a sardonic smile curled at the corner of her lips. "Helping, or kidnapping?" she sneered. With deliberate precision, Olivia produced her cell phone and dialed the police. "There's been a child abduction at Sunrise Diner," she declared in a measured, cold tone. "The suspect is an elderly black woman." A hush fell over the diner. Eyes shifted from Evelyn to Olivia, laden with judgment and whispers of suspicion. Despite the painful accusations and the heavy stares of the few remaining customers, Evelyn maintained her composure. Looking directly at Olivia, her gaze was firm and resolute. "I have never done anything wrong in my life, Mrs. Brooks. Kindness is not a crime," she stated, her tone calm yet unwavering. At that moment, Caleb, sensing the rising tension, clutched Evelyn's hand as though seeking protection. In the shadows across the street, inside the sleek contours of a parked luxury car, a black Bentley, sat Victor Sterling, a powerful man with a cold demeanor and unyielding authority. Victor was Caleb's biological father, and unbeknownst to both Evelyn and Caleb, his attention had been riveted on the unfolding scene. His expression was unreadable, yet behind the stoic mask lay a glimmer of curiosity mingled with suspicion. The heavy rain poured down on Lexington Street, marking the beginning of an intricate chain of events that would soon alter many lives. Inside the diner, as the murmurs of suspicion grew louder, Evelyn continued to tend to Caleb with quiet determination, her every movement imbued with years of hard-earned wisdom and compassion. At 67 years of age, Evelyn had known hardship. Her husband had passed away at a young age, leaving her to navigate a life marked by loneliness and struggle. Living in a modest apartment at the edge of Maple Street, every day had been a battle for survival. Yet on that fateful night, her instinct to care for a vulnerable child overrode any fear or hesitation. She leaned in close to Caleb and said softly, "Come inside with me. You cannot remain out there in the cold." Caleb, still hesitant, finally allowed the warmth of the diner to embrace him as Evelyn carefully maneuvered his wheelchair inside. After ensuring that Caleb was comfortably seated and served a meal, Evelyn returned to her work with quiet dignity. Little did she know that across the street, Victor Sterling's gaze was locked on her every move. Inside his luxury car, his eyes, cold and calculating, watched the unfolding events with an intensity that hinted at ulterior motives. To Victor, every act of kindness carried a price. The world, he believed, was a chessboard on which power and control reigned supreme. Later that night, after the rain had subsided and the puddles on Maple Street reflected the melancholic glow of streetlights, Evelyn returned to her small, worn apartment. In the quiet solitude of her modest living room, she removed her damp coat and sank into a battered chair. Her tired, calloused hands rested on her lap as she contemplated the events of the evening, a mixture of hurt, anger, and a lingering sadness that had been a constant companion through the long years of her life. Just as she was about to prepare a hot cup of tea to chase away the lingering chill, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. Who could be calling at such a late hour? Cautiously, she approached the door and, to her surprise, found Victor Sterling standing in the dim light. Dressed in a long, black coat with the collar turned up to emphasize his commanding presence, Victor's gaze was calm, almost unnervingly so. "Good evening, Mrs. Price," he said in a deep, authoritative tone that resonated with quiet power. "We need to talk." Despite a moment's hesitation, Evelyn stepped aside and invited him into her modest home. Inside, the sparse furnishings, a battered wooden table, a few mismatched chairs, and faded photographs, spoke volumes of a life marked by hardship and quiet perseverance. Victor's eyes swept the room with detached curiosity before he settled into the chair opposite her. "I'm here because of Caleb," Victor began, his tone devoid of warmth yet laced with an unmistakable command. "And also because of you, Mrs. Price." Evelyn, though visibly shaken, maintained her composure. "I helped Caleb because he needed it," she replied softly. "I did not expect anything in return. I acted out of simple compassion." Victor's gaze was unyielding as he explained, "Halt Dynamics, the corporation I lead, is currently embroiled in a scandal. Tonight's events at Sunrise Diner have cast me in a favorable light, portraying a compassionate figure in an otherwise cold corporate world. I want you to work for my company, if only for a brief period. It is a simple role with a generous salary meant to showcase a human side to our organization." Evelyn stared at him, disbelief mingling with sorrow. "Mr. Sterling," she said with measured dignity, "I helped Caleb not for money or recognition. I did it because he was in need. I will never be bought or swayed by the allure of wealth and power." A faint, almost imperceptible smile played at the corners of Victor's mouth. "That may be so," he murmured, "but opportunities do not come around often. You have little to lose, Mrs. Price." Despite the cold calculation in his words, Evelyn could not ignore the deeper truth of the moment. Caleb's welfare was paramount. Reluctantly, she agreed, her voice steady despite the inner turmoil. "I will work for Halt Dynamics, but know this, I do it for Caleb. I will not let my values be compromised by your money or your power." Victor's eyes gleamed momentarily with approval. "Very well," he said. "I expect full cooperation. My assistant, Alice Green, will ensure that you are given every detail of your responsibilities. Remember, every action you take reflects not only on yourself but on Halt Dynamics as a whole." Within half an hour, Alice, an efficient and unflappable woman with a keen eye for detail, provided Victor with a preliminary report on Evelyn's background. The report painted a stark picture. Evelyn Price, a 67-year-old widow with no living relatives, survived on a meager income from her part-time cleaning work. Her life was one of quiet struggle and profound loneliness, a life that, to Victor, was easily manipulable. Victor's expression hardened as he read the report. "A person with nothing is easy to control," he murmured. In that moment, the seeds of a dangerous game were sown. A game in which the raw power of a ruthless corporation would soon collide with the unyielding force of human kindness. Chapter 2. Into the Lion's Den. The following morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the towering glass windows of Halt Dynamics skyscraper, Evelyn found herself in a grand marble hallway, an environment that was a stark contrast to the humble surroundings of Sunrise Diner. With her mop in hand, she moved through the pristine corridors, her presence a quiet anomaly among the sharply dressed corporate employees who passed her by with barely a glance. Whispers and disapproving looks followed her every step. What was Victor Sterling thinking, bringing an old cleaning lady here? Some muttered under their breath. Yet Evelyn's resolve was unshaken. She was there to do her job, and her conscience was clear. Each swipe of her mop was a quiet act of defiance against an environment steeped in privilege and cold indifference. It was not long before she encountered Olivia Brooks again, this time within the sterile confines of the corporate hallways. Olivia, with her impeccably styled blonde hair and expensive attire, exuded an air of superiority. She stopped in front of Evelyn, a mocking smile on her lips. "Ah, Mrs. Price, the diner hero now, cleaning our offices." "How charming," she sneered. Evelyn's response was measured and dignified. "I'm here to do my job, MS. Brooks, I ask that you respect that." Olivia scoffed. "Respect? Do you even know what that word means in a place like this? You belong at a diner, not in our corporate halls." Her voice dripped with disdain as a small group of onlookers snickered. Before Evelyn could respond, a voice rang out across the corridor. It was Victor Sterling, his tone as controlled as ever. "Mrs. Price, please ensure that the CEO's office is cleaned before the meeting. Focus on your work," he ordered. His words, though delivered with the cold efficiency of a man used to command, only deepened the tension in the room. Undeterred, Evelyn resumed her duties. With each sweep of her mop, she silently reaffirmed her commitment, not just to the task at hand, but to the promise she had made to Caleb. Despite the relentless whispers and stinging remarks, her inner resolve remained unyielding. She was determined to prove that true strength resided in compassion, not in wealth or power. In the following days, the challenges at Halt Dynamics only grew. Evelyn was assigned to clean the executive offices, a private and highly guarded area on the top floor of the building. The room was a study in opulence. Expensive oak desks, lavish furnishings, and a floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the sprawling cityscape. As she meticulously polished a grand desk, her eyes fell upon a mysterious black folder left carelessly at its edge. The folder contained confidential documents, detailed financial charts, and projections that were clearly not meant for her eyes. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Evelyn quickly closed the folder and continued her work. But moments later, the phone in the office rang sharply. Hesitating only briefly, she answered in a soft, professional tone. "Executive office, this is Mrs. Price." A crisp, authoritative voice came through on the line. "Mrs. Price, Mr. Sterling requires that you bring the black folder from the desk to the meeting room on the 5th floor immediately. He's waiting." Evelyn's mind raced, but she complied without question. Grasping the folder carefully, she left the executive office and rode the elevator down to the designated floor. However, as soon as she opened the meeting room door, she sensed something amiss. The room was empty. No one was waiting. Before she could ponder further, a familiar voice called out behind her. "Mrs. Price, what are you doing here?" Turning around, Evelyn was startled to see Olivia Brooks, accompanied by Victor Sterling and several senior employees. Olivia's eyes danced with a mixture of mockery and accusation as she fixated on the folder in Evelyn's trembling hands. I was instructed to bring this document to Mr. Sterling, Evelyn explained, her voice steady despite the mounting pressure. I received a call. Olivia's tone grew derisive. Really? Because as far as I know, this folder contains confidential information about our upcoming financial plans. Where exactly did you plan on taking it? Her words, laced with suspicion, seemed designed to trap Evelyn. Victor Sterling stepped forward and took the folder from Evelyn. He flipped through the pages with a detached precision before fixing his steely gaze on her. Mrs. Price, who called you? He inquired, his tone as cool and measured as ever. I'm not sure, Evelyn replied honestly. It was a woman's voice. I was simply following the instructions as I understood them. At that moment, Olivia Brooks interjected sharply. Clearly, someone like Mrs. Price is not to be trusted in our environment. Perhaps you've already leaked the information. Her insinuations hung heavily in the air, and the atmosphere in the room grew stifling with tension. Realizing the precarious nature of the setup, Evelyn took a deep breath and began to defend herself. Mr. Sterling, I do not have the expertise to understand the value of these documents, nor the means to misuse them. If you wish to verify my actions, you can check the internal call history and the security camera footage. I only acted as instructed. Her measured words caused a ripple of surprise among those present. Victor Sterling's expression, usually so unreadable, now showed a flicker of uncertainty. He turned to Alice Green, his trusted assistant, and ordered, Alice, check the internal call logs and the security footage immediately. Alice, ever efficient, nodded and swiftly began her investigation. In that moment, Evelyn's calm and reasoned response seemed to deflate the carefully orchestrated trap. The tension in the room shifted. Doubts emerged among the senior employees who had once looked upon her with scorn. Yet, despite her vindication, Evelyn could not shake the heavy atmosphere that now blanketed Halt Dynamics. In the days that followed, rumors of the incident spread like wildfire through the corridors of the company. Whispers of betrayal and mistrust filled the air, and many began to wonder whether the benevolent janitor was, in fact, a pawn in a larger, more sinister game. Chapter 3. The Price of Conscience. As the internal investigation unfolded, Evelyn's position at Halt Dynamics grew increasingly tenuous. The cold corporate environment was unyielding, and despite her clear innocence regarding the document, the atmosphere of suspicion persisted. The employees' eyes remained wary, and even Victor Sterling's regard for her was tainted with a hint of distrust. One weekend afternoon, when most of the staff had already left the building, Evelyn quietly gathered her cleaning supplies. She had grown weary of the ceaseless scrutiny and the cold, unfeeling environment that seemed to prize profit over human decency. As she prepared to leave the executive floor, she paused when she heard the soft murmur of voices coming from behind a slightly ajar door. Her curiosity piqued, she approached cautiously. Through the crack in the door, she overheard a conversation between Alice Green and Victor Sterling in his private office. The topic was grim, discussions of a downsizing plan that would see 3,000 employees laid off from various departments. The plan was designed to cut operational costs by nearly 20%, with little regard for the families and lives that would be upended. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. She had seen firsthand the devastating effects of unemployment, having lived a life marked by hardship and the constant struggle to make ends meet. Unable to bear the thought of thousands of families suffering, she quietly retreated, her mind racing with a desperate need to act. That very evening, as the rain had once again washed the streets of Maple Street, Evelyn made a decision. With a determined resolve that belied her frail appearance, she walked up to the door of Victor Sterling's office and knocked gently. Her voice, though trembling slightly with emotion, was resolute when she spoke. Mr. Sterling, may I come in? Victor Sterling, taken aback by her unexpected intrusion, opened the door. Mrs. Price, is there something you need? He asked, his tone cautious yet formal. I overheard your conversation about the layoffs, she stated firmly. I cannot, in good conscience, remain silent while thousands of hard-working people, families who depend on their income, are being discarded like worthless assets. For a long, silent moment, Victor studied her. The weight of her words seemed to challenge the very core of his business philosophy. Finally, he spoke in a measured tone. Mrs. Price, these decisions are strictly business. Sometimes, sacrifices must be made for the survival of the company. Evelyn's eyes flashed with determination. And when those sacrifices destroy lives, Mr. Sterling, how do you justify it? I have spent my entire life knowing the pain of loss and hardship. I have seen families torn apart by the loss of stable income. Profit cannot measure the value of human dignity. Her impassioned words resonated deeply, even within the cold confines of Victor's heart. Yet he remained unmoved on the surface. I understand your concerns, but this is a decision of corporate strategy. We cannot afford sentimentality in the face of fierce market competition, he replied. Evelyn shook her head slowly. A company built solely on profit, devoid of empathy, will never stand the test of time. What good is success if it comes at the cost of people's lives? I urge you, Mr. Sterling, to reconsider. There must be another way. For the first time, Victor Sterling felt a crack in his hardened resolve. Though his expression remained stoic, the seed of doubt had been planted. In that moment, he realized that the relentless pursuit of profit might, in fact, come at too great a cost. Chapter 4. Rising from the Shadows. The following weeks were a period of intense turmoil within Halt Dynamics. The rumor mill churned relentlessly, and the planned layoffs loomed over the company like a dark cloud. Evelyn's act of courage had not only exposed the callous nature of corporate decisions, but had also ignited a spark among the employees who saw her as a symbol of hope, a small voice rising above the din of corporate indifference. During one particularly tense board meeting held on a Friday morning in a lavish conference room, the atmosphere was heavy with apprehension. The board members exchanged anxious glances as Victor Sterling, seated at the head of the table, maintained a veneer of calm authority. Just as the meeting was about to proceed, the door swung open, and Evelyn Price walked in. Her unexpected presence silenced the room. One of the board members, William Dawson, was the first to speak. Mrs. Price, this meeting is for senior leadership. I do not understand why you are here. Before Evelyn could respond, Victor interjected in a measured tone. I invited Mrs. Price. The board needs to hear an alternative perspective on the decision we are about to make. His words, though placid, carried the weight of authority that demanded attention. Evelyn rose to her feet, her posture dignified despite her humble background. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you not as a mere janitor, but as a representative of the thousands of employees who have dedicated their lives to this company, she declared, her voice clear and unwavering. These workers are not disposable commodities. They are human beings with families, dreams, and a future that cannot be measured merely in numbers. Olivia Brooks, whose disdain for Evelyn was well known, quickly retorted with a sarcastic laugh. Mrs. Price, do you truly believe you can understand the intricacies of corporate strategy and finance? She mocked. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, but her tone remained calm. I may not comprehend every complex number on your reports, Ms. Brooks, but I know that a company's true strength lies in loyalty, trust, and respect for its people. If you discard those values in favor of profit, what will become of Halt Dynamics when the very people who built it decide to walk away? Her words reverberated through the boardroom, leaving even some of the most skeptical board members in reflective silence. For a few fleeting moments, it seemed as though the cold logic of corporate strategy was being challenged by the warmth of human compassion. Yet, as is often the case in such environments, the tide of corporate priorities was not easily shifted. Despite her brave stand, Evelyn found the atmosphere within Halt Dynamics growing increasingly oppressive. The whispers grew louder, and the condescending glances more frequent. Olivia Brooks, in particular, made it her mission to discredit Evelyn at every turn, spreading malicious rumors that painted her as an opportunist seeking to undermine the company from within. These vicious attacks, however, only served to further strengthen the resolve of those who had directly benefited from Evelyn's kindness over the years. Unable to bear the hostile environment any longer, one late afternoon, with a heavy heart and a resignation letter clutched in her trembling hands, Evelyn Price returned to Victor Sterling's office. When he looked up, his eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise before his usual stoic demeanor returned. "Mrs. Price, what brings you here?" he asked, his tone a blend of formality and something softer, almost regretful. "I have come to tender my resignation," Evelyn stated firmly. "I can no longer work in an environment where power and profit are valued over human lives. I cannot be a part of a system that treats hardworking people as expendable." For a long moment, Victor remained silent, his gaze fixed on the resignation letter. Finally, his voice softened. "Mrs. Price, your words have given me much to consider. I respect your courage, but I must remind you that this decision will have consequences. Halt Dynamics will handle the formalities, and you will receive all your due benefits." Evelyn's eyes shone with a mixture of sorrow and steadfast conviction. "I need no further compensation, Mr. Sterling. I leave with a clear conscience. I hope you will one day understand that every decision you make affects countless lives." As Evelyn left the building that day, word of her resignation spread rapidly. The media soon caught wind of the story, and headlines began to portray the elderly cleaning lady as a hero, a symbol of integrity and compassion in the face of corporate greed. Public outcry against Halt Dynamics swelled, and the once impenetrable facade of corporate indifference began to crack under the pressure of public opinion. Chapter 5: A New Beginning. In the midst of the corporate storm, a call came from Samuel Blake, the CEO of Orion Group, a rival corporation renowned for its robust community support programs. His voice was calm and measured as he introduced himself to Evelyn over the phone. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Price. I have been following your story in the media, and I am deeply moved by your courage. I believe that together, we can make a meaningful difference for those who have been left behind." Evelyn was taken aback. Orion Group was a name she recognized from the headlines, a company that prided itself on championing the rights of the underprivileged. "Mr. Blake, I'm honored by your call. What do you propose?" she asked hesitantly. Samuel Blake's tone was resolute. "I am launching a new social initiative aimed at protecting the rights and improving the working conditions of low-income individuals in our city. And I believe there is no one better suited to lead this program than you, Mrs. Price. Your actions have already inspired countless people, and I want you to be the face of this movement."